Today we're going to be doing a quick deck guide on how to play Snorlax Stall, a fun competitive deck that is used in the standard format currently, and we're just going to get straight into it. We've got 12 Pokemon in total, and we'll start off with the namesake of the deck, Snorlax himself. We have 4 of these in the deck, and with it being the most important piece, what it does is that it prevents our Pokemon from retreating. As it is in the active spot, our opponent's Pokemon cannot retreat. And so with it, we want to make sure that the Pokemon our opponent has in their active spot is one that does very little to no damage. It is basically useless to our opponent. And so what we want to do is make sure that the cards around Snorlax allow for this to happen. It supports it, it controls our opponent, and basically gets them to a point where we burn all of their resources and they run out of cards. So with our 12 Pokemon, 4 of them being Snorlax, we obviously got 8 others, and those Pokemon are 2 Mimikyus. Now Mimikyu is very important as well, because when Mimikyu is in the active zone, our opponent cannot do any damage with their Pokemon EX or Pokemon V Pokemon to Mimikyu specifically. So Mimikyu comes in handy when our opponent's decks are filled with EX and V Pokemon. When they have them in the active spot, we bring in Mimikyu to slow them down, where they have to then build up their other Pokemon to try and take out Mimikyu, and that then allows us to better control the game and prepare our bench and our hand to handle what's coming in the future. Our next Pokemon is Mantine. We only run 1 of these. This just allows us to fetch cards from our opponent's discard pile, basic Pokemon, and put them onto their bench. So just fill it up with useless Pokemon that they don't want. We then have 2 Rotom Vs, a very important card because it gives us card draw. With its ability Instant Charge, we end our turn by just drawing 3 cards. And because we never actually attack our opponent, we almost drawing 3 cards every turn. Our next card is Pidgeot V. We have 1 of these, and this Pokemon allows us not to deck ourselves. We draw a lot of cards, we see a lot of cards, and we don't want to deck ourselves before our opponent does. With Pidgeot V, that's impossible. We'll always be able to play it on the bench, put it back into our deck, draw it, and the cycle will continue, basically preventing decking out from ever happening. Our next Pokemon is Sandshrew. He's specifically in the deck because of his Sand Screen ability. This one says trainer cards in your opponent's discard pile can't be put into their deck by any effect of your opponent's item or support cards, so preventing them from putting anything back into their deck with regards to item and support cards. And the last Pokemon is Chiyu EX, specifically for its Jealousy Singe ability, where it says discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. That just speeds up the process of getting rid of cards in their deck, and also hopefully hitting important cards that they have, like a Switch or a Boss's Order, that allows them to change up their Pokemon. We then got 46 trainer cards. Now these cards are probably, besides the Snorlax, some of the most important cards that we have to allow us to control the game. Very simply, we have Defiance Vest. This is important just to give our Pokemon extra strength and buffer. Once they have taken a prize card, Defiance Vest becomes active, and we take 40 less damage from our opponent's Pokemon. Very good to have on Snorlax if they do have a Pokemon in the active spot that is able to do damage, but hopefully very little damage. This card is able to reduce that damage to 0. A Heavy Ball, 1 of them, just to make sure that we don't have any of our important Pokemon in our prize cards position. We can fetch them with the Heavy Ball. 4 Counter Catchers, a very important card in this deck, because we always have we always have more prize cards than our opponent. Our opponent will always have less than us. Counter Catcher is almost always active. and it is important because it brings in the bench Pokemon into the active spot and allows us to control what our opponent has there. Switch Cart, one of these just in case we need to switch up our Pokemon, also does some healing for us as well. Two Misfortune Sisters, this is an important card in helping us reduce our opponent resources and also discarding some of their cards, speeding up the decking process. It allows us to look at the top 5 cards, and any item cards that we find in there we can then put into our opponent's discard pile. One Team Yell's Cheer, this allows us to recycle some of our cards back into our deck. Erika's Invitation, a very important card, specifically when our opponent realizes what we are playing and they prefer to keep back their more useless or support Pokemon in their hands. Erika's Invitation allows us to fetch those cards and put them into the active spot onto the battlefield. So just in case our opponent does realize early what we're playing and they're holding back with some basics, Erika's Invitation gives us an opportunity to put the game in our favor. One Forest Steel Stone attached to our Rotom V, so we can fetch whatever card we need from our deck. One Hero's Cape to give us extra HP on our Pokemon, and one Artisan so that we can always find our Snorlaxes and Mimikyus. Cyllene, one of these, helps us to as well recycle our cards, make sure that we keep our useful cards coming back into our deck. 4 Pokégears to find those support cards. 3 Pal Pads, again shuffling back supporter cards into our deck. And 4 Pennies. This card is very important for the deck. Penny contributes to the combo with Snorlax. Penny is a way to return Snorlax or whatever may be in the active zone to our hand. So if, for instance, the Snorlax has damage counters on it, Penny can remove those damage counters. We replay the Snorlax, and then hopefully we have another Snorlax which we can put back into the active spot, and we just keep that cycle going while our opponent burns out of resources. 4 Nest Balls to fetch our basic Pokemon. Bravery Charm, again another option to add HP and strengthen our Pokemon. Boss's Orders to bring bench Pokemon from our opponent's side into their active spot. Again, another option to control what they have in that active spot. 1 Iono, just in case we need to reshuffle our hand. 4 Arvens, so we can find items and tools within our deck that are very important, like the Pokemon Catcher, which will come in very handy. 1 Super Rod to hopefully recycle some Snorlaxes and Chi-Yus that we may have had that were KO'd during our battle. And 3 Eris. I really like Eri in this deck because of what it does. It not only discards supporter cards, it discards item cards from our opponent's hand. It also gives us information. We can see what our opponent has, what are they planning to do, and what we need to do in order to control what our opponent has. And then 1 Earthen Vessel just to get those energies that we need for the Chi-Yu, which you see we do have 2 fire energies in our deck, specifically for Chi-Yu EX, so we can use our Jealousy Singe. You could potentially use Flame Surge. I wouldn't advise on it. You don't really ever actually need to do damage with this deck. There may be a situation where you need to, but it's mainly for Jealousy Singe. And that is the deck guide for Snorlax Stall. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit the like button if you did. We've got some gameplay coming for you tomorrow, and we've got some really cool games, especially the last one in that video. I can't wait for you to see it. So thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.